It also looks like I'm eating something halfway. Like, am I normally eating on the podcast?
You're saying you think you're moving your mouth as if you're chewing.
I think somehow it looks like I'm chewing food in the podcast. I cannot watch any more of our podcasts.
Well, half the time you do have ice.
I mean, let's get on that and get a sponsor.
Well, we used to be called.
Jennifer only eats,
Jennifer only eats these chocolate covered peanuts
during the podcast.
It does. Like, I think I'm developing. Andy calls it Carl mouth. It's where you talk out of half of your mouth. I don't know.
Who's Carl?
I don't know. Is it the guy from Sling Blade? I don't know.
Oh, maybe
Carl. And so
sounds like it could be next.
I've gotten to where for some reason I'm when I'm talking to someone, and here's the deal: some people can stop talking when they eat. That is, I'm like, there's still things that have to be said.
Yeah.
So I know now that if I'm eating, I'll just talk out of a section of my mouth. And now I think I'm doing that kind of like a lot of the day when I'm not eating. And so now when I'm watching the podcast, it looks like I've got like maybe food in my mouth.
Well, you do need to solve that too, because one day if you actually do have a stroke, we need to know that things are different. And if you're already talking as if you've had a stroke, then we won't know.
Well, if you start smiling with one side of your mouth, that's when it's going to get really
I feel like that is a really red flag that you're saying we have to now know when you're not having a stroke, because most of the time we can't tell. Like, that's a very big cue of
really red flag.
You've got to stop doing this.
This is a really red, like you get a redder flag.
We can't tell when we talk to you if you're in a medical emergency. That's a sign that you're not looking your best.
Yeah. I have not noticed this problem, but it's fine if you have. So just be
since Erin and I have water in our mouths, do you want to do a challenge where you say things and see if we spit out water?
I'd rather not get our equipment all wet.
You're both thinking this is expensive equipment.
Very expensive.
We're not going to sit here and spit on it, but I do think that'd be a fun challenge at some point.
You know, it seems like we're ready to get started. I think is we've reached the end of our chit chat when you're like asking for challenges.
Yes.
So
let's get this.
We are starting later than normal, so let's just get started. Not take any more of Erin's time.
Okay.
And I won't call you out.
Okay.
About how I was 15 minutes late, then you were 10 minutes later than my 15 minutes late. Hello, and welcome to the Almost Amazing podcast from the CityRise Network. Hosted by Jennifer Dennis and produced by me, Justin Kello. We're a podcast that was supposed to be focused on parenting, but we've kind of lost the plot along the way. Honestly, we don't know what this podcast is about, but we talk to incredible people who love Jesus, and our hope is to provide encouragement and fun whenever possible. If our lack of clear direction bothers you, we apologize, but no one is making you listen to this podcast, unless you're married to Jennifer. Andy, thanks for listening.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Almost Amazing podcast. We're so excited to be with you today. How's it going, Justin?
It's going great. How are you?
It's good. It's good.
Yep.
Do you think if we had a few more viewers that we could get a press pass to be in the White House press room?
Depends on what you call the Gulf.
It depends on what you call the Gulf.
Depends on what you call the Gulf.
That is really funny. That's an excellent.
It's very important.
It really does
apparently
matter.
It really matters to them. I do have a question. I posted a video recently that I had not a lot of people push back on, but one person in particular I was confused about. Do you think it is ever acceptable to lie to your kids? As a Christian, of course, you're like, no, we should tell the truth all the time. But in reality, what do you feel?
You know, that's such a great question. That it has multi-layers to it.
Yeah.
I think that some people lie about being adopted. Okay. I think some people lie about, I know that's a really pretty big lie.
Yeah.
And for a while, for childhood, it feels good. Yeah. But when that comes out, it's really detrimental.
Right.
Saying that, like, my mom used to lie and say that Thanksgiving, like, my birthday was close to Christmas. Yeah. And she would say, oh no, they're a month apart. They were 10 days apart. That went south for me at school when I'm trying to convince people that December 14th is a whole month from Christmas.
Yeah.
Jokes on me for not knowing math. And then, so I think parents try to have a good reason, like if they're protecting their kid or like, you know, what, do you have a context?
So the context is my kids are frustrating with food. Like, they'll like something for a week and then they'll hate it the next week. And it's just this constant evolving, like chasing this endless, I can't find what they want to eat. And so we get in this routine of buying a few different things and they like them for a while. And so we had some Costco chicken nuggets, which they have liked in their lives before, but I made them the other night and my daughter was like, "Are these Chick-fil-A chicken nuggets?" And I was like, I looked her directly in her eyes and I said, "Yes." And she ate them
yes, they are.
without complaint, because the history is dinner has been kind of a constant burden and a frustration, and where they'll like hot dogs one week and then I'll buy hot dogs the next week, which I don't love, and I'll make it a dinner and then they don't want it. And I'm just like,
let me just say that you have a long road of that. I wish I could tell you that gets better. It does not.
But situations like that, and someone online was like, "That's not right." And I was like, I feel like there's some things
at some point she'll learn. Yeah. She'll learn that that's not Chick-fil-A.
But there's other things like, I've seen people post like, if they don't have time to go to the park or whatever, they say, "Oh, the park closes at 6 or whatever."
Sure. They kind of alter reality.
Yeah. And I'm just like, I don't feel bad about that. I just don't feel like, I feel like to survive parenthood in some ways, you have to veil some truth, some serious truth, like, if I had a kid during 9/11 and they were like, "Hey, what happened?" I'd be like, I wouldn't be ready to jump into that topic with them if they were 4 years old. So I would lie and say, "Everything's fine. Don't worry about," like, I think there are situations where it's just,
if she's not going to eat them and it's not, that's actually a pretty good example.
Yeah.
Because it seems like a little benign.
Yeah.
Some people are really intense about truth.
Yeah.
And then later it'll probably be a laughable moment.
Right.
Okay. So I had a laughable moment.
Okay.
I went to H-E-B yesterday. As you know, I don't know if you guys know this, but I have a very, very narrow opening to my garage. And I cannot stress that more. Mm-hmm. It's literally, once you get outside the mirrors, it's maybe 3 inches on each side.
Wow.
So to exit my garage and enter my garage every day is like a feat. I cannot be on the phone. I cannot be distracted. I cannot be doing anything else. I have to park in a specific place, back up to that, and enter the garage at a specific angle. Okay. There's no other way to do it correctly.
Okay.
So obviously I'm not perfect. So I've hit the sides of my cars multiple times on each side. So there's this big black stripe down one side and then some paint's wearing off. So I get to H-E-B. I'm in the parking lot and this gentleman starts speaking to me. And I'm like, "Oh, wait, why are you talking to me? We don't know each other." Mm-hmm. And he said, hey. And I go, "Hey, hi. Yeah, what?" And he's like, "If you give me $200 and go and while you grocery shop, you come out and I will fix this side of your car and I will put paint fixer on this one and I'll fix your car."
While you're in there shopping.
While you're in H-E-B. I go, "While I'm shopping, I'm going to pay you $200 to fix both sides of my car where I have a paint problem and this big black strip on the other side," which by the way, drive me crazy.
Yeah.
And
so you were tempted is what you're saying.
I was tempted and I'm like, okay, this sounds
legit,
like a racket. And I look at him and I said, "If we do this and you rob me, I'm going to be so mad." He goes, "I'm not going to rob you. I promise I'm not going to rob you." So I say, let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay.
I go in H-E-B and I call Andy. Uh-huh. And let me tell you, he was really unhappy with this decision.
Oh, of course.
He was so mad.
Yeah.
He's like, "Jennifer, this is a scam. Yeah. This is absolutely a scam.
Yeah.
Get out there and you stop this right now."
Okay.
Well, now I can't stop it.
It's embarrassing. You don't want to hurt his feelings.
It's embarrassing.
You don't want to hurt his feelings.
I don't want to hurt him.
Of course.
What do I do now? And I said, "Listen, Andy, I think they're legit. They opened their trunk. It seemed like they had tool things in there. I think this is legitimate." And so I walk around and I'm like, "Lord, please let this be legitimate. Please let this not be a scam." So I shop for a little while. I get some apples. You guys know I have an apple problem. I get out to the car and they're out there working on it. They're not lifting the front gate and driving off with it. They're not pillaging through my car. Yeah. I locked it before I left and they're actually working on it. And I'm like, okay, this may be a thing. Yeah. So I get the finances in order to be able to give them money. And I go, "Well, I'm going to go to JCPenney. I'll be back." So I go to JCPenney. I walk around a little while. By the way, how is that place still open? But whatever. So I come back out and they're through. They do have, and this is the thing, you know how, what's the stuff that you put polish? They have polish on it. And it's like a blue color, you know?
Yeah.
And they're like, you don't want to wash the polish off right now. You want to let it stay on as long as possible.
Okay.
And I go, I've never heard that about polish. Is this story getting too long?
No, I want to hear how it ends.
And so I noticed that he's like, I wouldn't wipe the polish off now. It's going to look great. But so they totally get this big black mark off the side of my car.
Did they get it off or it's covered in blue polish?
One side, they totally get the blue mark off. The other side that's covered in polish, when I finally wipe it down, is about 64 shades different from the rest of my car. Like it's the whole you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
And they use spray can paint. And it is obviously not a match.
This is not a joke. You did this. This happened.
I totally did this.
Wow.
I was talking to Officer Troy about it, who, by the way, is the best guy ever. And he's like, I'm really surprised you did that.
Jennifer.
I go, so is Andy. But Andy hasn't seen the car yet.
Oh, this happened today?
This happened yesterday. He hasn't seen the car. And he had to leave town. And I'm thinking, maybe he'll never notice.
Well, he's listening to the podcast right now.
He's not listening to this one.
You're not going to let him?
I'm going to tell him. I think now our podcasts are coming out at such an intermittent rate that he has given up.
He's given up.
That's why I think we're down to 8 viewers.
I don't think it's intermittent, but it has been tough, guys. It's been tough.
It's tough.
I cannot believe you actually went through with it. It makes me concerned that you might fall for one of the human trafficking scams one day. Where they leave like money wadded up on the. They leave like money wadded up on your dash, and like you get out to get it, and they grab you and run away.
They would lose money on that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad to know you're at least. Listen. The whole wife falling for a scam thing is a trope, but it's also pretty accurate for a lot of us. My wife doesn't fall for them, but there was one time she did, and now it's a little bit hard for me every time. Like, do you know about this? Like
you never forget it.
Every time I read about a scam, I'm like, have you heard about this one?
You're sending her this scam.
This is a scam. Like this is a scam.
Be careful.
Right now there's a toll tag scam. People are texting for toll tag stuff.
I got that.
Right. So I'm like, do you know about this? Because she had an IRS scam where they basically were like, you've got to pay this IRS fee right now or the cops are coming right now.
Apparently I'm on some sort of a easy scammer list. I get all of this. It's ridiculous.
So we did survive that scam. And I think she learned a lot from that experience, but there's still part of me that's like, every time it's like, you know about this, right? Like this is a scam because it's tough. I thought you were going to say one thing. One thing you brought up.
Justin,
I know this is already long, but I got one thing.
You keep talking and I come up with my transitional phrase for our guests.
What was the transition? Okay, what's the transition?
Well, the first one was when you said, I'm surprised you went through with it. I go, well, here's someone else I'm surprised we went through with. And that was going to be a transitional phrase. And then it was, but she learned a lot. And today we're going to talk about someone who's just learned a lot.
Then let's do it.
No,
let's do it.
I'm so curious now as to what you're going to say. Just say it.
To have a stranger call out the flaw in your vehicle. That's such a unique thing. When I was dating Kristen, I was in college, I was poor, whatever. And I had these tires on my vehicle that were like way too old. Like they were bad. And we were at a red light and this guy's like waving, like roll down your window. And like, I'm with my girlfriend, like trying to impress her on a date. And
so of course you got to roll down your window.
Well, I mean, he was like very frantic. Like I thought something was wrong. He's like, you need to replace your tires. They're bald. Your tires are bald. He's like yelling across the intersection about how bad my tires are. My girlfriend's with there and I'm like, yeah, I'm poor. I know they're bald. Like I'm trying to like get a couple more miles out of them because they cost $1,000 to get tires. But this idea of a complete stranger calling out the flaw in your vehicle, like it's such a jarring thing. So I see why they got your attention.
Yes.
Like I see why you're immediately like, because no one should do that. No one calls out that.
Right. No one. Speaking of things that we call out for one another. Today, that was a terrible transition.
Listen, I think the learn thing was great, but I also think unexpected was better. So say the unexpected things. Speaking of unexpected
things, things you didn't expect.
Things you didn't expect people to do.
Yes, that's also good. Yeah. Today we have our guest, which is just an incredible story today, inspiring. We're so glad he's here. We're glad you guys are still here. It's kind of a long show today.
We made it longer.
And we've just made it longer. We made it longer. All right. Anyway, let's dive in. Please welcome everybody. Aaron Senseman.
Hooray. He's a returning guest, by the way.
He's a returning.
And I do want to say this. The first time he came, we had to bring him back in because we were so bad in the beginning. We needed to re-record part of it. It wasn't his fault. It was our fault.
Well, I think that's both ways. I think it was part of our fault, but I also think Aaron didn't think we were really doing a podcast.
You thought we were pretending.
Well, that was the first manifestation of this podcast.
Before the cameras.
You were literally like the second or third guest.
Early on.
Like maybe even before then. And you're like, I came and got you out of your office. I said, hey, let's go do this podcast.
And I was like, where's dinner?
Yeah. Because it was the most amazing dinner.
Are you guys not going to feed us? Like, what is this thing? And through the podcast, you kept asking like, is this what you want? Like, what is this?
Yeah.
And it really did kind of lag the energy a little bit.
So we had to kind of redo part of it.
With so many,
we've learned so much since then. We have it under control. But Aaron is the worship pastor at our Bel Air campus, and he's been here almost as long as Roger. I guess Roger's the only one who's been here longer than you at this point.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
Do you remember a time before Leanna? I feel like Leanna's one of our...
been here because
she went to church here.
So Leanna was always here.
Right.
So I guess you can consider.
But do you remember a time when Leanna wasn't on staff?
No.
Okay.
Not really. I mean, she was always kind of present.
So. Right. I'm trying to think of anybody else. Robin's been on staff for a while. I'm just trying to think in my head, who do I think about the people? It's wild to me that I was in the church before Robbie came. I remember Robbie coming.
Oh, wow.
As a new person. I know, right? I remember Kirby's first Sunday.
Wow.
I was a member, and I remember they introduced us. This is funny, and I don't know if I should say this on the podcast, but Kirby gets up there, and he's introducing himself, and I looked over at Andy, and I go, he's a little too slick.
Whoa.
He's just too fancy.
We can't trust Kirby Follows.
It turns out he's totally like
Boy Scout of America.
He's amazing. He's like like amazing.
Yeah. I will say this. This is the first job I've had where I've been here long enough to see people come and go. We don't have a huge turnover rate here. So I do want to say first and foremost, we have a lot of people here who are here at least a decade or more, which is insane. But like any big organization, some people come and go. This is the first time I've been somewhere long enough where people have come after me and left before me. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like where I came before them, they came, they served a few years and they left.
I see what you're saying. Because I thought when you said see people come and go, I didn't think you were talking about the same person.
Yes. This is the first job I've been here long enough to see someone get hired, serve a good, 2 or 3 years.
A good number, a good while.
And then go somewhere else.
Well, that says something good about you too.
Yeah.
Yes. Some stick-to-itness.
Sticking around.
I like the three of us, I think I've been here, like you and I've been here 8 years. This is my 8 years.
We started the same year. We started around Harvey, right?
Yes. I started the week of 2 weeks before Harvey.
Chris,
yeah. I started in March before Harvey.
Okay. So you're not much older.
Lauren Irwin started that same year too.
It's a great welcome to Houston.
Yeah, it was.
It's a really great welcome.
It was wild. It was a big year for that because Lauren Irwin started, you started, I started, Chris started, and we're all still here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good year. Savannah started then.
Savannah, that's 5. Wow.
She's still here. That was 5 of us.
Who's going to be the first to go?
Of the 5 of us?
Yeah. The news is breaking. Yeah. Jennifer has a new job.
I don't have any announcements.
If Jennifer survived the summer, if she can survive the summer.
I've been here for the summer. Aaron, you've been here for how many years?
20? Almost 20, yeah.
Wow.
20 in June.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's amazing, depressing, all those things. No, it's been great.
Depressing.
Can you list all the jobs you've had here?
All the jobs I've had. Well, I was singles pastor.
I love that. He's got a lot of great stories.
I did not know that.
I did that for 5 years. And
what? I had no idea. I do not remember that.
I led 3 of the 4 of our worship services during that time. Which was a lot.
While you were singles pastor.
Single pastor, yeah. And then I oversaw communications so well that they gave it to Chris, and and so I did that for a time.
I think the phrase is you had too much on your plate.
Maybe so. That's what I'm going to say. And then,
but it was always worship in something.
Yeah, it was always,
worship was what you're hired for.
Well,
that's correct. I was hired
in your defense.
Yeah.
To be the worship leader over that much and run comms, that's insane. That's a lot.
Well, yeah, and the singles thing was particularly tricky because I was always occupied on Sunday mornings. And so to be a singles pastor, I kept asking, well, when am I supposed to do singles ministry?
Right.
Can we just get the small group up here kind of maybe on the drums?
At the time, I was holding rehearsals on Thursday nights. And so I had a singles ministry on Wednesday nights. And so that's when I would do it. But that's
wild to me that you have the singles minister not even be present for the singles.
Yeah.
during the single time.
I thought so too.
Were you the singles minister when we were leading a single adult ministry class?
Probably.
You would have known that, Jennifer. Surely not.
I don't know. I don't know. We started doing that in, I don't know. About 2012.
Okay, then no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that is wild. I think that's so. I know I'm making all sorts. I keep running into this. Okay, so I totally spilled half of a Coke on my shirt today.
Your microphone covers up almost everything.
I know, right? I totally spilled half my Coke.
Literally didn't
Sweetest thing, Mary Ellen's like, I've got a Tide pen. I'm like, Mary Ellen, you're gonna need like a
Tide paintbrush.
like a Tide.
You need a tidal wave.
Goes, there it is. She's like, I can give you a Tide pen. It's the sweetest thing. So welcome, Aaron.
So yes, there's a very specific reason we brought back Aaron. We don't think he has anything new to tell us about his job.
I will say it's not all of the same Aaron.
That's true.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
It's a good segue.
It's a great segue. We brought on Aaron because he has, I've never met someone who's had an organ transplant, I think. And if they did, it was so long ago, they didn't talk about it anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like old news.
Right.
But Aaron just went through a pretty incredible roller coaster of a journey for the past, probably 2 years was the bulk of it.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to hear a little bit about kind of that.
Do you mean
journey.
the bulk of
because he's
the organ?
You've had this disorder for many years.
For 20 years.
And they kind of warned you. So let's start there with like what the disorder was and how they kind of warned you, like, hey, one day this is gonna probably happen.
Yeah. So I had a disease called primary sclerosing cholangitis. And it's a rare disease of the bile ducts. And your bile ducts are mainly in your liver. Some of them are out of your liver, but mainly in your liver. And what happens is they become inflamed and they get scar tissue builds up, and over time your liver produces bile, and that passes out of the of your liver via your bile ducts. And so what happens is your bile begins to back up inside of your liver. It can't get out as these ducts become inflamed, and that damages your liver over time. So it's a progressive disease, and the only good thing about it is it's very slow to progress. And so even though I was diagnosed mid-20s, I don't even remember how old I was, but I think I was about 25 or 26 maybe. They did tell me at that point, most people will need a liver transplant from this. And so that's eventually what happens is, you get cirrhosis and your liver is so diseased that it can't continue to function. So.
What were the symptoms in the 20s that led you to get this diagnosis? Because you're not just like walking in.
So I also have ulcerative colitis, which is another autoimmune disease. They're both autoimmune diseases. And my doctor at the time was concerned about elevated liver enzymes because of some of the medications that I was on. And so it was basically just a kind of a fluke that he tested my blood and noticed that my liver enzymes were elevated. And so that's how the diagnosis was made. And then there was a confirmatory test called an ERCP where they go in and X-ray, they inject dye into your bile ducts and then X-ray your liver. And basically what your bile ducts should look like is kind of like a tree in winter with no foliage. But mine, it was just like this stump kind of a thing. It couldn't get into the liver. The dye could not get into the liver because
it was completely blocked.
Because they were so inflamed. And the doctor performing that test, wisely said, I'm not gonna force the dye up in there because then it will have a hard time getting out and could get infected. And so that's how the confirmation of the disease was made. And so you manage it with different medications and checkups and
did you actually feel your liver being inflamed?
Yes. So your liver, I don't think your liver has any pain nerves in it, but it's encased. And so as it began to enlarge, every once in a while, I would feel, first of all, it got noisy. I could hear like your stomach growling. It's a similar kind of sound, but it would be on my upper right side. And so I began to experience that. There were also these kind of spasms that I don't know how else to describe those. If you've ever had maybe like a heart palpitation or something like that, it's a similar kind of feeling where it's not painful, but it's very unnerving. It's very unsettling. It doesn't feel comfortable. It's like this just cramp, like it's trying to get the bile out is what I imagine. And since it can't, it's stressed. And so, and then there were occasional just pangs, just brief, but kind of sharp pains that would happen. Those were pretty infrequent, but I think that was that casing expanding.
So over the last few years, these symptoms have worsened. It's been harder to manage. So you got to the point where you're like, something has to give, something has to change.
Yeah. So the doctor, told me that at some point I would begin to get these infections, and I did, and so I was being hospitalized multiple times, and that's what Justin's referring to when he says it was about 2 years because I kept ending up in the hospital, and it's unpredictable. There's no way to know when this is going to happen, but you become prone to these infections of the bile ducts, and the only treatment is IV antibiotics. It has to be very aggressive, because unchecked, these infections are very serious and can be life-threatening. And I was septic at one point. And so
what does septic mean?
It's a blood infection, basically, which is a very serious infection that requires antibiotics. And so they, my doctor came to me and said, I think it's time to start talking about a transplant.
What is it like? Because we were kind of all briefly kind of kept in the loop of like, hey, because when you go to the hospital, if a coworker goes in the hospital, everybody knows, like, so it wasn't like hidden or whatever. But when you're faced with this, like, hey, now is the time to start looking for a liver transplant. What are the immediate, like, where you weren't surprised, but did it still feel like out of nowhere, or were you like, okay, this has been a long time coming?
Yeah. I mean, I can't say I was surprised, but I think there was a hope in the intervening period that, from my diagnosis to the transplant, that maybe they'll figure something out, maybe some kind of medical advancement will happen, or some kind of treatment or medication, and so that was a bit disappointing that, yes, I am going to have to go through with this.
And did you ever face the moment where they're like, hey, if this doesn't happen by this date, you will not survive? Or did it ever get to that?
I never got that sick. So, and that's the benefit of the living donor. A lot of people don't know that you can do a living donor transplant with liver. Because you can take a portion of a healthy liver and transplant that into the recipient, and then in both parties they regenerate, which is amazing.
Yeah. So share that part because our whole church got involved at a certain point to solve this problem.
We were all like getting blood tests.
Can we talk about that decision y'all made to when y'all started asking for help? Like,
absolutely. So the clinic basically guided us through this process, and they basically said, you got to just tell everybody, which was very uncomfortable. Especially, I'm more of a public person than my wife. She's very private. She did not enjoy this process, but she did great. And we made a video, we made a website, and we said, hey, here's the situation. I need a new liver, and maybe somebody out there can help. And
did it have to be a matched liver? Did you have to have the same blood type or the size or the?
Yes, you do. There's a lot of testing that's involved. The blood types don't have to be exact. Like I don't think the positive or negative matters, but they do have to. The blood type does have to be compatible in this case. And so but actually the first place they start is age, and so that gets a lot of people out of the mix. And then they have a very strict BMI requirement, because they want a good outcome for both the recipient and the donor. And so that they start there, because that filters a lot of people out, and then they go to the testing. And so, but there's a website through the hospital, and if you would like to donate, you go and then put your information in, and the hospital begins to get back to you. So
from the day you put out the request to when you actually got confirmed a match and someone was willing to give their liver to you, half of it, how long was that?
It was not very long. I don't remember exactly, but it was that whole process was pretty quick. I know that I can't remember when we put that video out, but it wasn't months. I mean, we thought that my transplant ended up happening in August, and we thought it was going to happen about now. We thought it was going to be about now before it happened. But once the donor was confirmed, it happened very quickly.
Yeah.
And so
it was a donor, and it was such a kind thing.
What's that first conversation like?
Yes.
Yeah. So, well,
because I'm sure you hear from the hospital first. It's not like this guy calls you and was like, hey, by the way, I got matched. They tell you.
That's true, because they, very big on the HIPAA stuff, and they don't. So the way that works is the transplant team for the donor is different, completely different than the transplant team for the recipient. They communicate with each other, but I never had any interaction with the donor team.
Gotcha.
So he had his whole, the donor team was completely separate, and you could do this entirely anonymously if you wanted to. The only thing that was awkward about that part of it was, and they tell you, don't give anybody anything that, don't share any information that you don't want to. But it was funny because, and we asked them about this. You had to know my birthday, because that's how they identified the recipient that you wanted to apply for. Mm-hmm. And I was going, okay, well, how if they want to do this anonymously, they don't know my birthday.
How are they going to get you a present
this year, Aaron?
Yeah, I know. I mean, so, and they're telling people, only put stuff out on the internet that you're comfortable putting out. Well, a lot of people aren't comfortable just giving their birthday to everyone in the world. And so I think that's a part of the process that could be improved. But yeah, we did hear from the hospital that we had a match, and then the donor reached out to me via email, and then we set up a time to have dinner, and I just, of course I bought dinner. I told him,
would that not have been the lamest thing ever?
Yeah, I said, I have this policy that if somebody gives me some of their liver, I buy them dinner.
Yeah, we're going to need to split that check. I'll get the queso.
Yeah, right, I'll get the queso for sure.
Well, okay, so I thought this was really funny. One of our Tim Yeager's child said, she goes, so if you just need body parts, you can put them in the prayer request. And people will give you body organs.
This specific one, yes.
So it's like, that's what happens at church. Too, I guess. You could do that.
I will say this. It's actually infuriating now that I think about it. I had foot surgery the week before Aaron had his liver transplant. I'm still limping, and Aaron is basically fully recovered. And I'm just like, what is going on? That a liver transplant.
You're still limping?
Yes, I had an MRI last
Justin,
week.
I'm so sad.
But I'm just like, it's kind of like, I'm like watching Aaron just like lead worship and run around and having a great time.
Speaking
and I'm like,
speaking of bouncing into life.
It was a really good liver.
I keep looking at your stomach. I know that's kind of weird, but I'm like,
my stomach,
addressing your liver. But now that you have the new liver, can you tell a difference?
Well, so the instant difference was itching. One of the symptoms, particularly of biliary disease, is itching. And I had gotten to a point where the itching was intense and constant and miserable. I couldn't sleep.
Was it one spot or all over?
No, it's everywhere you have skin.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, God.
And some people, I mean, as bad as it was for me, I've heard worse. That some people say they itch behind their eyes and stuff like this, places you just can't even scratch. And so that was gone immediately when I woke up. That was the first thing I remember was like, oh,
worth it.
If that alone was, if that alone was alleviated, it would have been worth it. But so that for sure that was an improvement. And then, my liver enzymes continued to come down, and they've been normal now for the past couple of months, which is the first time in years that they've been normal again. So, and I've had numerous people, I mean, these are people who know that I had a liver transplant, so I don't know if there's any bias in that, but they say my coloring is better.
Your coloring is better.
Yeah.
I can tell your face looks healthier.
Yeah.
It's true.
When you're looking at this experience, obviously you can't face the prospect of death and also just a really burdensome process of surgery and recovery without learning something.
Yeah.
So what do you think God was teaching you, or what are some things you noticed as you went through this?
So patience was something that certainly was impressed upon me. just the beautiful picture of community that was painted through this. I mean, the church being the church. I mean, that was probably the most striking thing, was just that someone would do this for me. And they believed that it was something that God laid on their heart, and they just obeyed. It was an incredible act of mercy and obedience and sacrifice. And it's I get a little bit emotional about it, because it's the church being the church, and it's one of the most amazing things, because we met with a lot of people in a similar situation. Of course, I mean, you take these classes. And it was so heartbreaking, because some of these people, they didn't know anyone. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to reach out to people. They weren't a part of a community. And, I just remember being struck by that, because the church gets a bad rap, but you don't hear about things like this. You're only hearing about the things that, are more typically judgmental, or the things that the church does that sometimes annoy people. But you miss these stories that only happen in the church, that only happen through community, and through someone being obedient to God, saying, "Hey, I want you to do this." And so that was something that was a lesson that was incredible. Just experiencing that love, that level of giving from another person, another family, because it took a whole family's effort to do this. And words utterly fail, to express gratitude or anything like that. I mean, and so it's a debt that I can't repay, and it's something that is the picture of who Jesus is.
I think that it's an extreme example of you're talking about these people who don't have a community, don't have a church, not knowing who to turn to for help. It's obviously an extreme example of what community can provide for you. And so I do wonder that sometimes, like, people who aren't in a church, like, not just looking for a liver transplant, but like, there's so many needs that come up in day-to-day life. And if you're not right next door to family, I don't understand how these people get through life without that safety net of a community nearby. And so it is a great, once again, an extreme example, but in small ways, I think church community comes through for people in ways that I don't know how people manage without it.
Right. Even on top of if they don't have faith, the community is the fruit of our relationship with Christ, and to not have that either, just like, how are you doing this?
Right. If you could be in a community that doesn't believe in sacrificial love, and they could match a liver and be like, actually, I'm not into this. It's not a good time.
Yeah,
for
this
me.
is not it. This is
kind of inconvenient.
Right.
But I cannot imagine anyone in our church.
It was very inconvenient for sure.
I can't imagine anyone in our church matching and saying, I'm not doing this.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure.
I can't imagine anybody in our community that goes through the process of at least testing, getting the results back, and saying, well, actually, I don't know if this is good for me.
I don't know. I feel like if it's maybe people who don't always like Aaron's song choices,
the worship style.
Yeah, if they're like, he hasn't played this song in 3 years, I'm absolutely not.
I mean, I would have been open to negotiation.
Can this person make any worship request?
I will give you my liver if you will play this Chris Tomlin song from 1997 every Sunday for a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that I learned was, and this may be less spiritual, but I think there's certainly a tie-in, is how our bodies are made for movement. That was one of the first things they did. I was up and walking the day after the surgery, and it was painful, but it was
Justin's so bitter.
Okay, well, I was limping. Let me just put it that way. But the thing about it was, when I was in the hospital, I would wake up in so much pain, and my first knee-jerk response was, "Oh, I'm behind on my pain pump. You have a pain pump in the hospital." But what I realized was, when I got up and started moving, the pain it dissipated, and it wasn't due to the meds, because it happened whether I did the pain pump or not. I started noticing that, and so that was really. I mean, you hear that you hear that movement is good, and we need to be. We
got to
get
you up, get you moving.
Got to get moving.
Yes.
But that was such a stark example of the benefit to me. I mean, I never experienced it like that. never had it that much in my face, but I do think God designed us to move, and that, you know, he wants us to go, you know, he wants us to get out and do his work. And so it's kind of a reminder to keep ourselves healthy, you know, if we can. And so I know there are different people with different levels of ability, but I think there's, you know, there's always room for improvement in that regard. And so we should take it seriously.
You know, that's the first I've thought about movement being part of healing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I haven't thought of it in that way before, but I think you nailed that. That's great.
Yeah, it was.
Man, this is such an inspiring story.
I know.
Aaron.
And I wish we could celebrate the donor more, but they've obviously chosen to be anonymous, which is great and humble and all, you know,
yes,
it's just, you know, it's such a cool thing. And if you do know this person, some people in the church obviously know because it's a community, you know,
right.
Make sure to reiterate how incredible it is. You
we
know?
have talked about like, what would you do? Like, what is the thank you gift? What do you say in the card? You know, did you keep your old liver?
I have pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And he will show them.
How big is your scar?
It's very large. It's basically all the way across my abdomen, and then a little bit up toward my rib cage.
Wow.
So,
jeez Louise.
Yeah.
I don't know why I didn't think it would be that big of a scar, but I guess you have to dig through everything to get to it. I guess the liver's not like out and about.
It's not. It's
not going to be just like a
mine was
stitches.
Mine was easier to get to because it was enlarged. But the other piece that they put in,
got to get a really good handle on that thing.
But I mean, now thankfully the donor surgery was not at all to minimize it, but it was easier because they were able to do his laparoscopically, and so he has a much smaller incision. Which I'm grateful. He was back at work in like 2 weeks. It was amazing. Wow. And so, and just so everybody knows, the donor is doing great. He's
that's great. Amen.
Do they check up to see if his liver's regenerate?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Wow. He has to, he goes through a similar process post clinic, but the biggest difference is that he doesn't have to worry about rejection or anything like that. Like he does. I have to take a bunch of medication. Forever.
How long? Forever.
Yeah.
Continual.
I mean, some of them I'll get weaned off of, but the anti-rejection stuff specifically, I'll have to take forever. So, but with the ulcerative colitis, I was already on medications.
Forever.
Yeah.
It's just like put it in the Thursday.
Yeah.
Pack.
So.
Man, that's cool, Aaron. That's amazing to see how God has used you through this and healed you through this. And we're just so glad you're better.
I'd be remiss not to thank everyone who prayed for me, everyone who signed up to be a donor, because it wasn't like, you guys should know this. This is amazing. The clinic had to ask me to stop asking for donors.
Oh, wow.
Because we had so many people respond.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And because I told them, a church that I used to be on staff at, it was a very large church, and they were willing to put out, and I told the clinic, I said, I need you guys, because we weren't getting a lot of direction on how far to go with that. Mm-hmm. And there were certain things that they just weren't telling us, because I think maybe they didn't work with people who I guess had as many avenues for asking as maybe I did. But they definitely said, "Oh no, please don't do that," because
definitely do not expand this search.
They couldn't keep up with all the.
So you didn't have to get on the Cademan Call fan page and
I didn't have to do that. Yeah. although one of Derek Webb's fans did contact me about. So that's kind of nice because he posted our video on his.
Oh, how
stuff.
Fun!
Yeah, and so she lived in Detroit though, and so it was logistically would have been difficult.
That's really humbling.
That's wild.
To have that many people reach out and want to.
It was super humbling. I mean, and I have to say, like that's one thing that I did tell the donor that I said, man, I know that this doesn't help or doesn't change anything, but I want you to know I would absolutely have done this for you. Like I absolutely, and I that's true. I mean, and I feel like we should all be willing, to do this for someone else in the community. I mean, and if you want to just do it, there are ways to do it altruistically. Yeah. I mean, you can sign up to be a kidney donor or a liver donor, and if that's something that God lays on your heart, I mean, that's a pretty amazing thing to do.
I'll say this too. something that doesn't cost you anything is to be an organ donor for when you die. Like, I know I always talk about it.
Yeah.
But like, that's such an easy thing.
Are you an organ donor?
Yeah. It's on my license.
Yeah, I am too.
Because like, why not? Like,
you kind of hypocritical.
You kind of have to be now. Like
yeah.
that's, yeah.
Why not? You gonna fix your makeup halfway through the show?
I'm packing up.
Oh, you're done talking to me. Wow.
Packing up, getting my things together.
We got one more question.
We do. What was the hardest class you had in school? This is the get to know you question, completely unrelated to this liver business.
Class I had in school.
What was the hardest class you
took? And we can
in
answer
school?
First.
Sure. It's embarrassing for me. Had I never moved to Houston, like I did not know the level of brilliance that people like in my former life before living so close to Rice and meeting all these incredible professors. Yeah. And I thought that I was pretty smart. Yeah. Now I think I'm maybe a touch above average. Like,
so what class did you struggle with?
No, I was going to see what you said first.
Oh,
I might change my class.
My class. And I mean, I was good at math, but I didn't love it. And so I took calculus AP class my senior year. And I was like, I'm not taking this class and not passing the test. Like the whole point of this class is to pass the test and get the college credit. I was like, I'm not wasting a year of my life on this class because you don't have to take calculus. And so, as we got closer to the AP exam, every morning I was in like before school tutoring. My teacher's like, please help me pass this stuff. Like I'm not wasting my time. So it was the one I had to work the hardest at to get the grades I needed. But in college, the absolute hardest class that was they duped me. I needed a science class. I was like, cool. I saw astronomy listed at the University of Texas at Austin. And I thought it was like memorizing constellations and like learning facts about the sun. Like I thought it was going to be cool. It was physics. It was literally calculating how fast stars move, how fast they die. So like all it
stellar astronomy.
It was
like,
I'm so
awful.
glad
like I was every TA session. If the TA was doing our homework for us, like literally he was like, all right, question 1, let's work on it together. Like I would not, I had never worked so hard for a B in my life. Like school comes easily to me. That was the first time I was like, I may not pass this class. And I was terrified. But this fortunately the TA helped me and I was livid. So don't take astronomy if you're looking for constellations. Like it is straight up physics in disguise. And it was awful.
Oh, that sounds, I think for me, so in college, I had some classes that statistics was hard for me to jump over for some reason. I think I retook statistics so many times that they thought I was a math major because I was always in the math building.
What do you need statistics for? Is it just basic class?
Yeah, it was like a math that I needed to graduate. French too. I'm not proficient in language. I came for like another language for me for some reason. I hit a wall. And everybody's like, good night. She really is just average intelligence. But when I was in seminary, we took this class called systematic theology. And the reason this class was hard is because the professor would get up and say, by tomorrow, I need you just to write out your theology of whatever. And so it was like, what's your theology of creation? And so like by the next morning, we had to have written out, what do you believe about creation? And he would walk around the class and read out loud sections of our paper. And every class he would pick a kid in the class and just demolish their paper. Just like break them to the core of I don't want to live anymore. And so what made the class so hard is like, you tried so hard for that. And he called them ditties. I want you to write a little ditty. And it'd be like, ditty number 11. What is your theology of the Trinity? And you're like, good golly, this is hard. And then you just sat there and waited to see where he would land. And you're like, no, not me.
Yeah, my only exposure to systematic theology is Wayne Grudem's book, Systematic Theology, which is incredible. But I was reading with a friend for fun in college, so it wasn't for pressure. Fun. Yeah, it wasn't. It was fun. We picked the theology we wanted to read, and it was actually really enlightening. But I can't imagine being like graded on my theology.
Yes. Aaron.
So I relate to Justin when he said he can do math, but it's not his thing. Like that was me. I mean, the classes that I had to work the hardest in, it seems like were calculus classes or pre-cal, or even algebra 2 was pretty tough for me. I had to work hard. And then I dropped an accounting class in college. I was taking 16 hours though, and so I
dropped an accounting class too.
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like, why am I doing this? I'm jeopardizing a perfect GPA for, and taking more hours than I really needed to. And so I dropped that. And then I do have a funny astronomy story though.
You took astronomy too.
Yeah. So there was
maybe the same class. You went to UT.
I did go to UT, but this class was at ACC.
Oh, okay.
But we had this old, they had astronomy divided up into solar astronomy and stellar astronomy. And stellar would have been more the physics. And then the solar is just more, you do the right ascension and declination, and you're learning how to, locate that. Yeah. That's
what I thought it was going to be.
Right. And even that wasn't, there was some thinking involved.
Yeah.
That class wasn't hard for me, but it was hard for everybody else in the class because we had this old guy from Appalachia, and he was telling he would say all this stuff. Like, he told us about, they had a coin when he was little called a mill.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of that?
No, not off the top.
I've never heard that. So you have a cent. Well, this is a mill.
Oh, even smaller than a cent.
Yeah, it's 100 mils to a, like, how do you buy something?
Wow.
With 100.
Well, that's back then when a burger was 5 cents. I mean,
that's like being at the post office and they've run out of all the stamp but 1 cent stamps.
So anyway, I'm just trying to give you an idea of who this guy was. But he stood in front of our class one day and was so frustrated. He goes, "Yeah, y'all are the worst class I've ever had." He said, "I'm serious. I'm not kidding. Y'all are the worst class I've ever had."
Dude, the hard thing about UT was I love the diversity. I love the international community at UT. But you'd get a teacher with the thickest accent, and you're like,
"Oh, they still struggle."
You're
with that.
Just like, I can't understand. Like, I'm sure if they were speaking more,
trying so
hard, and I'm not judging you for your very thick Indian accent, but like, I am trying to understand the words out of your mouth, and I'm like looking at the lips. I'm like, it's really for a boy who grew up in tiny East Texas town where everybody talked like this, and like,
it's tough.
Nobody had an accent other than this. Like, it was really tough.
When I dropped accounting, I walked up to the professor and I said, "Hey, I don't think I'm doing well in this class." And I said, "I made a pretty bad grade on the last test. I'm thinking about dropping it." And he said, "How's your workbook? Like, what does your workbook help you?" And I said, "There's a workbook." It's like,
I'm surprised you even talked. Why do you even talk to your teacher about it?
"Yeah, you need to go drop this class."
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be an accountant.
Dude, this wasn't maybe the hardest class, but it was the most humbling class I ever took at UT. I thought to be a pastor, because I was going to be a pastor, I was called to be a pastor, but I was getting a degree at UT. I thought to be a pastor, you needed to be able to play golf. I thought a lot of ministry happened on the golf course. Like, I thought there was a lot of like discipleship, connection with business guys. And so I was like, I learned to play golf. And so I took golf pass fail at college, and thank the Lord, because I would have failed. You know what I'm saying? Like, you'd have
made like a D.
So bad. Like, it would have destroyed my GPA, because like, basically you get free range balls for like, the first half of the semester, but then you start playing the course. And I just could not do it. My body would not do it. I could not drive the ball. I could not get it to go further than 7 feet. I mean, it was the worst experience of my life.
Oh, Justin, I'm so sorry.
But it was enlightening in that I know, okay, that's not how I'm going to do ministry. If ministry,
that's not going to be the way.
That's not the way. And then unfortunately I find out that nobody's trying to play golf anymore. So like, it doesn't even matter. But like, I just had this perception that like I needed to play golf for some reason.
That's so interesting.
It was awesome.
That was well, man, this has been a good time together. Thanks so much, Aaron.
Absolutely.
Glad we made it happen. We've been talking about it for a while. If you enjoyed this show, please
talk about a long show.
Yeah. If you, another plug for if you feel led to give. There are ways to give in this way that this donor did, and we celebrate that. But we also are just thankful for our church community. So if you're looking for a community and you're like, hey, I don't know if I need a liver transplant, if I have anybody to talk to. We have a lot of great communities that I think would literally give you half their liver at our church. Join a community group. I'm not joking. Join a community group. I think you'd have
to get involved in the community group for a little while.
You don't just show up just for the liver.
Hey, guys.
But our community groups are really, really incredible at our church. If you hit CityRise.org/adults, you can find a group for you at any of our campuses. They're just geared to where you're building the types of relationships where you can call on people for any need that you may have.
Right.
That's right.
And in our community, it's a lot of times they had a new baby and they need help making dinners. Like it's just kind of like the day-to-day task of being a human in Houston. But if you're looking for that sort of support, you can find it in our community groups. And if you try one, you're like, oh, this isn't for me, try another one, because they're all just a little bit different with a little bit of different vibes, but they're worth the effort to get plugged in.
True. That's true.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. Thank you, and thanks, Justin. And thank you, guys. We hope you've had an almost amazing time on the Almost Amazing podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Almost Amazing podcast from the CityRise Network based in Houston, Texas. CityRise is a partnership of church campuses, nonprofits, and missionaries devoted to lifting our city and the world by generously giving the gospel of Jesus Christ. For more information or to find a church campus close to you in the Houston area, visit cityrise.org.